Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I want to look at some of the independent comics that I have, and I'm just going to go through them as I talk, because I was going through my boxes looking for things that I wanted to read over again, and I noticed that I have a lot more independent comics than I actually remember. And they're from a whole bunch of different companies. This one here, these are, Adventure Comics. Livingston Mountain. I really like Livingston Mountain. The art was a little bit new to me, but I really liked the story when I bought it. And I'm going to go through these and just look at all the different kinds of comics that we have here, and independent comics. And these are mostly from the 90s, some from the 80s, some earlier, but nothing really after that. These are all adventure comics because I'm going in alphabetical order, because I am one of those people who make sure all of my comics are in alphabetical order. These are all my Planet of the Apes, because I was a really big Planet of the Apes fan. And there's a bunch of kinds of Planet of the Apes adventure comics, put out a bunch of them in different series. But these are the kinds of things that made their way into my collection, just as here and there purchases, whereas, you know, I only have one box of these. I have, I don't know, more than 20 boxes of, long boxes of Marvel comics at least, and then that's not counting my other DC, which I don't even know. Certainly not as many as 20, but there was a lot of them. But I always seemed to buy these comics that really just took off, and they're not ones that you would normally. Here we go. Here's some American comics. You got your old Blue Beetle. Yeah, that was great stuff there. And what's Sentinels again from the America Comics. This was great stuff. This is stuff before Blue Beetle and Captain Atom and The Question. All of them before they went into DC. And oh, you got some old stuff like the Jaguar. Oh, that's a really old one. It's in bad condition, but, you know, I still bought these things every now and then, and now I'm looking at them. There's the only Archie comic that I ever had. I think it's the only one I ever bought myself, is because here was the big shock back then when this came out, and I'm not sure what year it came out in. 1991, I think it says. Jughead got a haircut. Yeah, he got a mohawk. That was the big thing. Yeah, imagine people now today with the idea of what they have Jughead on television. Yeah, the big thing was he got a haircut back then. And here we have Caliber Comics with Camelot, another really good, almost art book. It's a painted book. And I got a whole bunch of, Carlton Comics. We're coming up to the seas here, so we got Carlton Comics. If I can get them unstuck. Here we get Fighting Marines. And these are not in very good condition, but they were some of my war comics. I've done videos on my war comics. And here we got Comely Comics with good old Captain Canuck. Yes, good old Captain Canuck, of course. You know, if you're Canadian, you remember Captain Canuck. I'm sure they do have some new Captain Canuck out. But anyways, reason why I wanted to do this and talk about these comics was because they were always out there. They were always out there, and you could always pick them up somewhere. And today, you can pick them up online. Today, for the new comics, I'm saying, not just these old ones, but I'm saying new comic books with new comic creators. You can pick them up in your comic store still, stuff like Alterna Comics, and I'm always saying, go pick up some Alterna Comics. They're nice and cheap. Well, cheap wouldn't be the word for it. Inexpensive, right? Nice and inexpensive. Here you have, Comico. Oh, yeah. With the Elementals. What else we got? I'm not even sure what this one is. King of the Dwarves. This one, it's Comico too. Oh, and more Comico with the Maze Agency. I follow the Maze Agency through a number of different companies. These, I was always a big Magnum PI fan, so, you know, I liked investigation agency kinds of things. And then you have, here, what do you have? Continuity Comics. Oh, yeah. Continuity Comics. I got a bunch of Continuity Comics. This is Armor. Of course, we're going in alphabetical order again. Look at that art. I mean, I know the stuff inside doesn't have this kind of quality of art, but these are really good independent titles. And they are always out there. And we should support these independent comics now that you have the big two pushing things that nobody wants. Speaking of things, the big two, there you go, Crazy Man. Crazy Man is probably running Marvel right now, sitting in a chair next to Sana Amanat. Here we have Cyber-Rad. Oh, I love Cyber-Rad. Cyber-Rad was great. I think, who is it that just did a review of Cyber-Rad? I can't remember off the top of my head. But Cyber-Rad, I remember I had to buy these off of a turnstile rack somewhere. It was like a little Quick Pick or 7-Eleven or something like that. And I had to get and as many as I could when I could, because this is not a place I frequented very much. I loved Cyber-Rad. This is some of the best independent comics right here. These are very 90s comics, though. Very 90s indeed. So we're still going through the continuity ones. We can go into the Megalith. And again, great art, great comics, stuff we should be purchasing right now. Stuff of this quality. And I noticed that, you know, when I was originally buying these things, I always kind of groaned a little bit at the art. Sometimes I would groan at the story and think, well, they're not as good as Marvel, but hey, they're not too bad. But today, I realized that, you know what? Sometimes you're going to have to put up with the fact that your art and your story in these independent comics are not exactly as good. Oh, here we got Samurai. There we go. Yeah, and you can see the plot on this one right here. Exactly. You can see the plot from the cover there. And moving on into Zero Patrol. I think that's the last one of my continuity comics. The last little bit. But when I bought these, like I said, they were not stuff that... This is the one that I was actually looking for. This is the one I went to the box to find for, Total Eclipse, because I actually found one in my dollar box, and I said to myself, hey, I remember reading that in, I don't know what it was, probably 1989. And I can still remember the story. And I bought the next one because I want to continue on the story. From what was it? 1989? I don't know, 1990. These were expensive back then. It was like, what? It's $5.25 an issue. Never paid anything like that back then. That's why they only bought the one issue. That's the one I was looking for, though. Oh, and then we get into the gold key. So, oh yeah, I got off track. All right, well, my good old gold key with Battle of the Planets. Battle of the Planets. Yeah, do you remember that? I don't know. You have to be pretty old to remember that. And oh, Battle, which was got Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Yeah. Do you know that Buck Rogers took off on his deep space mission? Deep space mission. He took off from the Earth in the last of the deep space missions. I think it was 1987. Yeah. That's when he took off in his deep space mission. It was the last of them, 1987. Anyways, oh yeah, Dr. Spectre. And Dr. Spectre again. But you have to put up with a little bit of, we'll say, not really non-professional. It's the fact that these people need to hone their craft. These people in their independent comics, oh, that poor Star Trek, look at that. They had to hone their craft. And when you're in Marvel, when you're in those kinds of venues, you got people editing you. You got people... Oh, Turok. I love Turok. This is the real Turok. Turok, son of stone. Way old Turok. Turok that is way, way before they came out with any of the idiotic video games or anything else. That's real stuff. And then we get into all of my... Oh, yeah. Aliens, which is Dark Horse. I'm going to go through the Dark Horse really quickly because, you know, there's so many of the Dark Horse here. Oh, look at that. These Dark Horse. We got, this one was fairly expensive back in the day. And I got a couple of volumes of it. This is the original first time that it came out of Aliens. Anyways, you have to put up with the fact that they're not going to have as good a art and sometimes as good as stories. And it's not you just giving up. And it's not you giving in to what you might think of as an inferior product. It's simply that they don't have the resources that you would have, at very least. I don't know about today, but back in the 90s, they would have editors that would say, this is what you need to do. No, redo this panel. No, redo this kind of the story. You're going to have to do this. Or you'd have to have somebody there saying, no, I'm doing this in another book. You can't cross over with the same kind of, I don't know, story that's in space or something like that. All right, those, oh no, there's a whole lot more of the aliens, isn't there? Anyways, because they had these editors who would help you out and give you direction in what you're supposed to be writing and how your art was supposed to improve. It did improve much more rapidly. But like I said, that's not anything that's happening today, especially in these independent comics. And I know I make fun of people like Mr. Canales, who has been trying to get into comics and who drew Iron Sights, and how it seemed a little bit amateurish. But you got to remember, again, these people are trying to get into comics. These people have not had someone over them helping them along the way. And they have to do everything themselves. And again, it's not really an excuse. Oh, there's Ghost. Oh yeah. There's another one with plot. Yep. Anyways, I don't know about all these Dark Horse. I'm going to go through them really quickly. So, I think that we should support our independent comics. And I'm not talking about IDW and Boom. You know, those kinds of things, you might want to support those, like Dark Horse here. But a lot of what I bought, because I do have a bunch of Dark Horse, especially when I get into, oh yeah, this Dark Horse Presents, because they have the Next Men. Well, I'm getting into the Next Men, because the Next Men was stuff that I bought because it was John Byrne. Not because it was anything else, because it was John Byrne. I love John Byrne. That's what that was. And you have these people in Dark Horse and an Image, because I have a whole box of Image, and I have a whole box and a half of, what was it, Valiant Comics. This one reminded me of OMAC. And then you have the Next Men. But you have these people trying to get into, not so much into an industry, but to create their own comics. And these are the people that we need to be supporting. And these are the people that I had, funnily enough, forgotten that I have always supported. Because, again, oh, the Next Men. I just have so many of these. And yeah, and they were full of plot too. Yeah, poor old John Byrne trying to write a story. And he just couldn't keep up with his art, I don't think. But we don't have any John Byrnes today. Not even in Marvel. Not even in Marvel. And there's the Mask, long before anybody knew who the Mask was. Long before anybody knew who the Mask was. And, oh yeah, Predator. Old Predator. You know, I never really got into many videos where people just show what they bought. And these things are not even stuff that I bought. These are just things that, you know, I bought in the 90s. And I just realized that I had again. These are all beautiful books. And I had thrown them into a banker's box is what I threw them into. I had no respect for these things way back then. Not as much as my Marvel and DC. Here is the best here's the best movie adaptation on any comic book ever you will ever see. RoboCop versus Terminator. You ever get a chance to buy this and read it? Go do that. It's Walter Simonson too. I'll buy Walter Simonson books. I went to my dollar boxes this week and I found some old Battlestar Galactica that had Walter Simonson doing the art on, and holy Moses, I just went and I bought those right away. Just because of his art. Just because of him. No other reason. No other reason at all. Oh, here we go. Star Wars. My table's getting kind of messed up here. Star Wars. And again, that's actual Star Wars story there. Come on. Gotta get this too. There you go. There's plot. There's your Star Wars plot for you. Dark Empire. Everybody remembers Dark Empire if you went through Star Wars stuff in the 90s, of course. Oh, yeah. This is when it started to resurge. Anyways. Like I said, these are the books that we should be supporting. These independent people, these independent comic books. And again, I'm showing you all Dark Horse here because I got a lot of Dark Horse. But it's not so much the Dark Horse. It's a lot of other books that have, here's my thing from Another World, which, you know, John Carpenter's thing. And I did a video on this, actually. If you go through my feed. Here you go, here's more Terminator. What else we got? All right, moving out of the Dark Horse. Here we go. Here's Event Comics. Look at that, George Perez. Have you ever even known that this existed? I wouldn't unless I bought it in the 90s. And then you have some Eclipse books. I'm actually finding more and more that I like Eclipse books, although this Robin Hood was not so good. And then we have First Comics with your Dreadstar. Oh yeah, Dreadstar moved into, I think it was Marvel for a little while. Oh, here we got some old stuff. Classics Illustrated. Good old Classics Illustrated. And then we have these anthology books. And I've actually found out that these are worth something. I never thought that these would be worth anything. More Star Trek. Yeah, I was a big Star Trek fan. Let's see what else we got. All right, we got, what in the world? Shadow Walker. Oh yeah, this is Ground Zero Comics, I think. I think that was the only one of that I bought. But still, I gave it a try. Samurai 7. Sorry, I had to stop there for a minute. My comics were falling over, and I'm not letting that happen. But yeah, we have to appreciate these small comic companies. Oh yeah, there's Hero Graphics with Flair. Yeah, Hero Graphics had a bunch out. These other ones that come up next, these are innovation. Oh, they had a lot of comic television crossovers. Hero Alliance, yeah, there you go. That one, if I remember correctly, yeah, she brought some plot to that one as well. And there you go, innovation with Maze Agency. They had the Maze Agency there as well. Like I said, I follow the Maze Agency around a little bit. Yeah, good old 1980s, early 90s art. I don't know why in the world I bought On a Pale Horse. That was an awful story, but I bought it. So, yeah, we need to appreciate these companies, these smaller companies, and these smaller individuals who are trying to put out these comics. And you know why? It's because the big two, they don't appreciate us anymore. Oh, here we got some JC Comics. Oh, look at Thunder Agents. Now, if someone wanted to start their own comic company with a Marvel type superhero group like the Avengers, go to Thunder Agents. Look at that, Steve Ditko art. Beautiful stuff. There are plenty of heroes. There are plenty, the Spirit. There are plenty of comics out there. There are plenty of kinds of comics. Plenty of kinds of people who want to do these comics for you. These are Malibu. I think they're Malibu. And they appreciate you. Yeah, more plot. They appreciate you. And so I am certainly appreciating them more and more every day, especially going through all of these. Now, I am going to put my money into these kinds of comics, these kinds of independent comics whenever, there you go, whenever I get the chance. More Protectors. You got Protectors. Again, this is what Malibu's version of the Avengers. And they worked. And, you know, if they had time to actually develop their industry, to develop Malibu, and having never sold it off to, I think it was Marvel, then it would have been something that would probably still be around now with the Protectors. But that's the whole thing. These comics never stuck around because of the big two. Because the big two is always driving them out. Because the big two is always driving them out, they never had a chance to develop into their own separate companies. Good old Tarzan from Malibu. There's more. I forgot one there. And there's a lot of Tarzan actually in here. But again, as I was talking in one of my videos, that Marvel comes with a history, and we expect that history in our comics. But these younger companies, these younger artists, these younger books, plot in Tarzan, and there we go. You can see the plot there. They need to be able to grow. If you look at the history of comics, if you look at where these really good comic companies that last with characters went to and came from, I don't even know where this Doc Savage came from. What? Who in the world? Millennium. Came from Millennium Comics. And here, I think, are the only two, no, there's more than two, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were really good at one point. I I didn't buy very many Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even though I lived through the whole craze. It kind of got on my nerves. But if you look at comic companies and you look at comic company histories, the ones that actually began and stuck around were ones that didn't start with their own heroes. They usually started by republishing other people's heroes. Here's your old Modern Comics, Captain America and Blue Beetle again. And they started by republishing other things, and they became a publishing company first. And then, once their publishing part was Judo Master, once their publishing part was well entrenched and at the very least successful, then they moved into publishing their own comics. And they became somewhat good at it, some more than others. And that's even the history of Marvel Comics. So, who knows that when you go out there and you buy something, there's now comics. I love that, Bruce Lee. If you support these independent comic companies, these comic companies may indeed someday be the new Marvel, especially with the big two on the outs with their customers, at the very least Marvel, and DC to some extent as well. Twilight Zone, gotta love the Twilight Zone. Who published that? I think that's Now as well. But don't be discouraged by what you see as being somewhat inferior art or somewhat inferior storytelling, because, again, these people have to hone their craft. And there's a lot of Twilight Zone here. I really like the Twilight Zone because, well, not so much of the Twilight Zone that came out in the, I think it was 80s, but it was more of the Twilight, the old black and white ones were always on television. Oh, the Twilight Zone. And support them, at the very least, with a little bit of interest and a little bit of money here and there. PC Comics. Oh, yeah. Master of Horror. Oh, here we got some Red Circle. Here's the ones that I was talking about in one of my other videos. The Shield. Lancelot's Strong Shield. These Red Circle ones, I remember. This was like the first comic store that I ever went to when I was on a trip. I picked these ones up. I went, what in the world are these? But I wish that a lot of these companies had continued on and had kept these heroes alive. Black Hood, instead of them jumping from one company to another, actually bought all of these heroes in their own books when they went over to DC for a little while, in the Impact part of DC, Mighty Crusaders. Yeah, look at that. I know there's Mighty Crusaders around today, but these are the Mighty Crusaders that I remember. This is not, even though they were in that Archie line, they were not Archie-type heroes. Archie wasn't there in their little universe. These were just superheroes. And I love the fact that Mighty Crusaders are there today and people are remembering them, but I am looking at the old Shield. I'm looking at Lancelot Strong and the rest of them and thinking those are my Mighty Crusaders. I wish they were more what they used to be. Wonder Comics with Terraformers. And here, look, even before Red Circle, I don't even remember. It doesn't even say on this one who published this one. Flyman. See, you got the old Shield. These characters have been around for so long, and these companies have been trying for so long with these books that we need to support them, and we need to find something that we can support in these new comic, I don't know what you call them, in these new comic companies. They're not even companies. I would say avenues, these new comic avenues, like ElfQuest. If you don't know what ElfQuest is, you should go look it up. More Wonder Comics here. And then I move into my Image Comics. And there's so many of those that I'm not even going to bother going through some of them. Like I said, there's a whole box of them. Anyways, this is just a rambling video, and rambling it is. But these are the comics of yesterday that people had to put out. These are the comics that people were putting out when they didn't have the internet, when they didn't have Indiegogo, when they didn't have avenues that they could explore with, just getting in touch with their customer base. They did the best that they could, and they got them out there. So certainly these companies that are doing so now, these independent people that are putting out their own comics, we need to support them, and we need to make sure that these great comics and these great comic creators are never forgotten. Anyway, like I said, just a rambling video. I wanted to do something a little light after all my other videos, which were not light at all. And so I thought I'd do this just because I was looking for comics through my my own stacks of them and looking for something in particular. Anyways, if you got to the end, if you enjoyed this at all, I don't know if anybody would enjoy it at all. I don't know if anyone's actually going to watch it. I'll probably get like 10 people watching it, but that's okay with me. Gives me a little something lighter to talk about. But if you did like it, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of my one box of independent comics, excluding, you know, the Valiant and excluding the Image. Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye.